War is chaos. But within that chaos, there are still rules. You follow orders. You trust your commanders. You obey the chain of command. But what if those orders are insane? What if the person shouting commands has no idea what they're doing? What if, because of arrogance, ignorance, or just pure stupidity, those orders get people killed? Throughout history, soldiers have followed orders that never should have been given, tactics that made no sense, assumptions that turned into death sentences, marches into blizzards, charges into machine guns, retreats into minefields. This is the darker side of military history, the dumbest orders ever given in war and how they got good men killed. 1. The Charge of the Light Brigade, Crimean War, 1854. It was supposed to be a quick strike, a glorious cavalry charge. The British officers wanted to stop Russian forces from removing captured artillery. Simple enough, so they told the Light Brigade, some of the finest cavalry in the British Army, to charge forward and stop them. But here's the problem. The orders were confusing, and the general in charge, Lord Raglan, wasn't even on the battlefield. He told his aide to relay a vague message: advance rapidly to the front, follow the enemy, and prevent them from carrying away the guns. Which guns? Where? No one clarified, so the Light Brigade, led by Lord Cardigan, charged into a valley surrounded by enemy artillery. They rode straight into a death trap. Cannon to the left of them, cannon to the right of them, cannon in front of them. Over 600 cavalrymen rode in. Roughly half were killed, wounded, or captured, all because of one badly worded order. 2. Hitler's no retreat order, Stalingrad, 1942. The Eastern Front was a frozen hell. German forces had surrounded the Soviet city of Stalingrad, but they couldn't take it. Winter came. Soviets counterattacked. German troops were freezing, starving, outnumbered. The obvious military move? Retreat. Live to fight another day. But Adolf Hitler issued a direct command. Not one step back. No retreat, no surrender, no escape. He didn't care about the weather. He didn't care about supply lines. He didn't care that the Luftwaffe couldn't airdrop food fast enough. He just wanted the city at any cost. That cost? Over 300,000 German soldiers were trapped. By the end of the battle, 91,000 surrendered. Only 5,000 ever made it back to Germany. All because of one dictator's pride. 3. The March into Russia, Napoleon, 1812. It started with over 600,000 men, the Grande Armée, Napoleon's finest. Their mission? Invade Russia. Force the Tsar to surrender. End the war in one swift campaign. But what did Napoleon do? He ordered the army to march deep into Russian territory in summer without proper winter supplies. He assumed the Russians would surrender quickly. They didn't. Instead, they burned their own cities. They lured the French further in, and then came the cold. Napoleon refused to turn back until it was too late. Temperatures dropped below -30 degrees Celsius. Horses froze mid-step. Men died in their sleep. Clothes tore. Food ran out. By the time they retreated, less than 10% of Napoleon's army remained, all because he thought Russia would fold. It didn't. And a dumb strategic gamble turned into a frozen massacre. 4. The Dieppe Raid, 1942. Before D-Day, there was Dieppe. The Allies wanted to test the Nazi coastal defenses in France, so they launched a raid, primarily using Canadian troops. But here's the catch. The plan was rushed. The beach was narrow. The Germans were dug in with machine guns, artillery, and tanks. And the landing time? Broad daylight. The Canadians hit the beach and were immediately mowed down. Tanks got stuck in the shingle, radio communications failed, air support was late. Commanders still ordered men to keep charging straight into gunfire. In 9 hours, more than 900 Canadians died. Thousands more were wounded or captured. A test run, they called it. It was suicide. 5. The attack on Gallipoli, 1915 World War I. British and Anzac forces plan a bold move, land on the Gallipoli Peninsula in Turkey, take the Dardanelles, open a sea route to Russia. But the planning? Catastrophic. The beaches were heavily defended. Turkish soldiers were waiting. The terrain was steep, rocky, brutal. Still, the order came. Land, take the heights. No cover, no surprise, no real maps. The result? Wave after wave of soldiers sent up bare slopes into machine gun fire. In 8 months, over 250,000 Allied casualties. And for what? A failed beachhead. The generals blamed the soldiers, but it was the orders that were stupid. 6. Operation Market Garden, 1944. It was supposed to end World War II early. A bold, daring plan: drop paratroopers behind enemy lines, seize bridges in the Netherlands, rush Allied tanks forward, break into Germany. It was genius, on paper, but it had flaws. The plan depended on perfect timing, but roads were narrow, bridges were heavily defended, and one key target, the Arnhem Bridge, was too far. When British paratroopers landed there, they were outnumbered, undersupplied, and unsupported. And the tanks? Delayed. The order to hold Arnhem at all costs was given. They held it and died. Over 17,000 Allied troops were killed, wounded, or captured. Why? Because no one accounted for real-life obstacles. 7. Soviet human wave attacks. 1939-1945. During World War II, Soviet commanders sometimes issued chilling orders. Advance, do not stop, anyone who retreats will be shot. And they meant it. NKVD officers, Stalin's secret police, stood behind Soviet lines. If a soldier ran, they shot him. This led to human wave attacks. Unarmed men charging machine guns. No cover, no tactics, just bodies. One Soviet soldier later recalled, "We went forward, the man beside me was hit, I picked up his rifle. I didn't even know how to fire it." Some survived, most didn't, because of orders written in fear and enforced with bullets. 8. The Battle of Fredericksburg, 1862 American Civil War. Union General Ambrose Burnside had a goal: break through Confederate lines at Fredericksburg, Virginia. He had the numbers. What he didn't have? A plan. The Confederate Army held high ground behind a stone wall. They had artillery, rifles, a clear field of fire. Burnside ordered his men to march across open fields again and again, right into enemy fire, wave after wave. 13 assaults, same result every time: slaughter. One Confederate soldier said, "We almost felt sorry for them. It was like murder." Over 12,000 Union casualties. For nothing. 9. The Charge at Crojanti, 1939. This one sounds so stupid it became a myth. Polish cavalry charging German tanks? It wasn't quite that dumb, but it was still bad. The Polish cavalry charged German infantry near Crojanti. They were armed with sabers and lances, traditional weapons, and they succeeded until German armored cars showed up. The cavalry had no anti-tank weapons, no air support, no escape, and their commanders still ordered them to continue. It turned into a massacre. It was one of the last cavalry charges in history, and it ended with bullets shredding flesh and armor crushing bones. 10. The Vietnam Body Count Strategy, 1960s. Here's one that didn't kill soldiers directly, but it encouraged killing for the wrong reasons. During the Vietnam War, US commanders measured success by enemy body count. Not territory gained, not strategic victories, just bodies. So soldiers were ordered to chase kills. Every dead enemy meant a win. It led to horrific practices: fake reports, misidentified civilians, kill zones created to inflate numbers. Villages were burned, innocents were shot, and commanders said, "We're winning." They weren't, because the Viet Cong didn't care about body count. They cared about ground, and the Americans kept giving it up. 11. The Battle of the Somme, 1916. This might be the ultimate example of dumb military orders. World War I. British generals ordered 100,000 men to go over the top and attack German trenches. They believed artillery had destroyed enemy defenses. They were wrong. The barbed wire remained, the machine guns were ready, and the moment soldiers rose from their trenches, they were cut down. Mowed like grass. On the first day alone, the British suffered over 57,000 casualties. More than 19,000 deaths in a single day. And still, generals said, "Try again tomorrow." It went on for 141 days and gained just a few miles of land. 12. The Baghdad Highway Retreat, 1991 Gulf War. Iraqi troops were ordered to retreat from Kuwait down Highway 80, also known as the Highway of Death, but they weren't retreating fast enough. So U.S. forces bombed the convoy, and bombed, and bombed. Thousands of vehicles were destroyed. Soldiers, civilians, even hostages were caught in the attack. The Iraqi command should have staggered the retreat, used multiple roads, moved at night. Instead, they created a perfect target, and U.S. air power did the rest. The result? A 60-mile traffic jam of charred wreckage and burned bodies. 13. The Fix Bayonets Order, World War I. Trench warfare, mud, rats, death. Sometimes generals thought the answer was old-school bravery, so they gave the order, Fix Bayonets. It meant climb out of the trench, run at the enemy, and stab him. This might have worked in 1812, but in 1915, it was suicide. Machine guns shredded entire battalions, and the bayonet charge became a symbol of outdated thinking. One British general said, "They have the fire, we have the guts." Turns out, fire wins. 14. The Nazi scorched earth policy, 1943. When Nazi forces began retreating from the Soviet Union, Hitler gave a direct order: destroy everything. Roads, railways, crops, homes, factories, even wells. It wasn't a tactic, it was vengeance. And it meant that German troops retreated through barren wastelands with no food, no shelter, and no supplies. They starved, they froze, they were hunted down. Because their own leaders turned the battlefield into hell for both sides. 15. The Kamicazi Orders, 1944 to 45. Near the end of World War II, Japan's military grew desperate. So, they gave one of the most horrifying orders in history: suicide attacks. Young pilots were told, "You will crash your plane into the enemy ship for the Emperor, for honor." They were given just enough fuel to reach the target. No return, no options, and they went. Thousands of them. They died with honor, their commanders claimed, but many were just kids, given one-way tickets and no chance to live. So, what do all these orders have in common? They came from people detached from the front line. Generals, dictators, politicians, people sitting in tents or bunkers or offices, ordering men to march, charge, hold, and die. Some of those men were brave, some were terrified, but most followed orders, because that's what soldiers do. And that's what makes it tragic. The dumbest orders in war aren't just footnotes, they're death sentences, carried out by those with no choice. So the next time you read about a battle, ask not what the soldiers did, ask what they were told to do, and why, and who paid the price for someone else's mistake.